Hello everybody, Propane Podcast here. Hello everybody, Propane Podcast here. I'm back. Today I'm going to read an audiobook called The Autumn Before Slumber. The cool wind roughed the warm brownish coat of Grizzly the Bear. They observed the beautiful yellow and red leaves become unwelcome by their tree, as the vicious wind rattled them out of their home. A tint of white on the green grass frosted the ground to a cold and unpleasant touch. As the days become shorter, the nights become longer. Grizzly knew winter was coming. However, for Grizzly, winter wasn't all that terrifying, as it may have been for the other animals. The season before winter was the most frightening to Grizzly, the season that has now inevitably arrived to the forest. Grizzly had no family, and this was his first year he had to prepare for hibernation. Dun dun dun. Alone. As a cub, Grizzly had his mother, sorry guys, the scripture's a bit bad, to provide him food for the winter. She always said, in order for you to grow into a great bear like your father before you, I need you to eat lots of food to last for a long nap during the winter. This year he had to find food on his own, and he did not have the slightest idea how. Grizzly was desperate, so he sought advice from his best friend, Rabbit. Dear friend Rabbit, how do I prepare for the winter ahead? I haven't had the slightest clue how I am to gather so much food. Rabbit replied, It's really simple. In fact, let me show you where to find my favorite cuisine. What's that? Grizzly said obliviously. Grizzly already knew what it was, of course. Carrots and cabbage, but he didn't want to spoil the surprise for Rabbit. Carrots and cabbage, Rabbit responded very energetically. That stupid little Rabbit. Anyways. Follow me, Rabbit exclaimed. Every summer, Rabbit talked about the crop field where he got carrots and cabbage. He must be taking me there, Grizzly thought. We're here, Grizzly, just up ahead. Grizzly always wanted to see the field. It was Rabbit's favorite thing to talk about. Rabbit was a simple friend, but a good one. With Grizzly, he would always share a carrot, and Grizzly would reluctantly take it. Grizzly wasn't all that fond of carrots, but he knew it made Rabbit happy to take his gifts. As of now, Grizzly was hungry and couldn't wait to eat the carrots this time around. Days that Rabbit wasn't finding food or digging his hole together, sometimes they would play hide and seek. It was far too easy for Grizzly to find Rabbit because he would never really hide. He would just stand still and think Grizzly couldn't see him, while Grizzly could see him all along. When they finally arrived at the field, Rabbit's gleaming smile. What is this word? I don't think that's a real word. Anyways, gleam and smile soon began to fade. They both soon realized that the snow and the frost that destroyed the Rabbit's beloved field. Dun 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 again. Rabbit took a long sigh. Let's get out of here, Grizz. There's nothing left to harvest. Page 2. Grizzly wasn't sure how to respond, though he felt bad for Rabbit because he was never in a bad mood. When they arrived back at Rabbit's home, Rabbit seemed to be deep in thought. Grizzly asked Rabbit, What's the matter? What are you thinking about? Rabbit took a while to respond, but eventually said, Wait here, Grizz. So Grizzly did. Rabbit quickly vanished into his hole and gave the hungry grizzly bear 2 carrots and 3 pieces of cabbage. I don't know if the author meant 3, leaves of cabbage or 3 heads of cabbage, but 3 of some part of a cabbage. I'm sorry, guys, the specification was a bit low on that part. Don't blame me. I'm the messenger. Grizzly devoured what Rabbit had given him almost instantly. Rabbit was astonished how fast the bear had eaten his hand-earned offering. He gasped, Wow, Grizzly, slow down. You ate that really fast. That usually takes me days to eat. Grizzly was offended by this and let out a small but threatening grunt. Grizz soon lightened up a bit as Rabbit understood that Grizzlies needed to eat more than maybe Rabbit realized. Rabbit offered Grizzly 3 more carrots and this time 4 pieces of cabbage. Now Rabbit and Grizzly always had a saying when they were parted ways. See you later, alligator, they said simultaneously, although they had no idea what an alligator was. So I don't know how they learned the saying. Grizzly headed to his den, hungry yet truly grateful to have Rabbit as a friend. However, he was most grateful that Rabbit had given him food, yet it still wasn't enough. The grizzly bear laid in his den, growing hungrier and hungrier, as his stomach rumbled through the whole night. The next morning, Grizzly the bear wanted a rabbit's home once again. "Good morning, buddy," Grizz exclaimed, realizing that Grizzly hadn't called him buddy. Since Grizz was a cub, certainly confused Rabbit. However, Rabbit was enthralled to see Grizzly so happy. "Morning, Grizzly, you're up early. How are you today?" Grizzly got straight to the point. "Hungry. Got any carrots or cabbage?" "Certainly, I got tons of food I've been saving." Rabbit Rabbit said, trying his best to be positive. Rabbit again went down to his hole, and upon his return gave Grizzly 5 carrots and an entire cabbage. However, this time Grizz wasn't as grateful as Rabbit had hoped. "That's it? That's all you got?" Grizzly said with an attitude. "But Grizz, I gave you more than last time," said poor Rabbit. "Yeah, still's enough. Is that really all?" "For now, my friend. Maybe ask Squirrel about getting the food. He is very resourceful," Rabbit said. Grizzly was anxious to find food, so he immediately took Rabbit's suggestion. Not a bad idea. "I guess I'll see you later, Rabbit," said Grizzly. "It's see you later, alligator, Grizz. Not to see you later," Rabbit said, frustrated as it seems Grizz had forgotten the saying. But Grizzly did not hear him, as he was already off to see Squirrel. Now Squirrel was always so afraid of Grizzly. Grizzly was so enormously larger than Squirrel, and had a far deeper voice than Squirrel did. As Grizzly approached his tree, he could. Page 3. Feel the vibrations of the bear's steps. Terrified, Squirrel swiftly ran up his tree into the hole that Mr. Woodpecker made for him. "Squirrel, it's Grizzly. I need to talk to you." Grizzly knew his appearance was quite intimidating to Squirrel, so he came at a different approach. "I know you're scared, but it's urgent." Squirrel, knowing that Grizzly was a good friend of Rabbit's, decided to climb down the tree. "Rabbit must have told you, I don't like many visitors, especially large ones," he gulped. "Indeed, Rabbit said you could help me find food before the winter," said Grizzly. Squirrel was in a cloud of fear, and only heard parts of what Bear was saying. "Oh no, Grizzly, please don't eat me, please." "Listen, that's not what I was saying. Rabbit just said that you were good at finding food." Grizzly paused and added, just to mess with Squirrel, "Unless you aren't good at finding food, I may just have to eat you." No, it's true. I can find you food. Just don't eat me, I beg of you," said Squirrel, even more frightened than last time. "Okay, then show me," Grizz pushed. Squirrel seemed to lighten up a little. "I will, but you must watch first." The Squirrel began to look around left, then to the right, and once more. "You'll see the forest grass. There's so many trees, so many hills and rocks, but do you know what you don't see?" Grizz listened intently. "You don't see it, do you? The forest is a treasure chest of food. You can find it anywhere, but where I find it is down below. As a squirrel, my job is to find food. I'm talking acorns, almonds, peanuts, walnuts, pecans, you name it. And then as soon as I find them, I bury them for later, so no one else can steal them from me." Squirrel let out a chuckle because he was very excited to share his work. "So that's all? That's all that you do, was find nuts in the ground and bury them?" I need to eat more than that," Grizzly said, disappointed. "Oh, yep, pretty much, yeah," said the Squirrel, surprised that Grizzly was not impressed with the work. "I can give you some if you tell that peaky owl to move into another tree. I was here first, now every single night when I'm trying to sleep, I hear hoot hoot. It drives me nuts." "The owl," said Grizzly. He always heard stories about the owls from his father, but he wanted to know more. Next page. "Yeah, the great wise owl. He's supposed to know everything. Not so wise to me, though, to move next to my tree. You want some of my food, I can give it to you, but you gotta get the owl out of here." "I see that. Thank you for your help," Grizzly said as he wandered over to the great wise owl's tree. "Wait, Grizzly," exclaimed the Squirrel. "Going over there now is no use. You're gonna have to wait until tonight to tell him to move, because that owl sleeps like you do during hibernation." So Grizzly waited for the owl until around midnight. In the meantime, Grizzly became deep in thought. If the owl really knew everything, he could teach me to fish like Mama did and hunt like Papa did. Just that thought alone made him hungry for food even more. He then focused on what Squirrel said earlier, the force of the treacherous food you just don't see it. So the bear desperately did what Squirrel had taught him to do, dig up the ground in search of nuts. After a while and mud-covered paws, Grizzly realized he couldn't do it like the squirrel could. Although Grizzly couldn't find a good source of food, he knew of a good source of water, the river. He then approached the nearby river for a drink. Looking at his transparent reflection in the stream, he remembered his mother. Mother would always feed him honey. Deep sadness came over him that he would never get the sweet, delectable taste of honey again. If he wasn't to find enough food to eat soon, honey was not available this time of year. Or at least that's what Mother always used to say. While his thought ensued his emotions, his stomach rattled louder and louder each time he was famished. His stomach wanted nothing more than something to eat. Grizzly drooled to the thought of salmon or trout, but felt so helpless because he had the slightest clue how to catch these fish with his imprecise paws. But he tried and tried anyways. Grizzly splashed his paws in the river in hopes to find salmon or trout. In this desperate moment, he was now looking for any live fish in the river, but indeed, there were none in the vicinity. Afterward, poor Grizzly spotted a swarm of flies and tried to catch them. He pathetically swatted at the flies, but he missed every time. Grizzly was losing the courage and awaited the rest of the day for his moment to speak with the great wise owl. The grizzly bear watched the stars set in the sky so high, and the moon shed a glow in the forest. The night was cold. Not even Grizzly's layered coat of fur was enough to give him warmth. His stomach became further void as it rumbled again and again. Grizzly began to cry. Moments had passed, and suddenly he heard a distinct noise. Though it was faint, he followed the sound. As he got closer, he could almost make out what the noise was saying. He heard it again, but clearer this time. Hoot, hoot, hoot. It's the owl, Grizzly shouted. Grizzly insulted back to the owl's tree, hustled back to the owl's tree, and spied the great wise owl, or so he has been told, on the very top of the branch of the tree. Grizzly bear, what a pleasant surprise. I suspect the splendid squirrel asked you to kick me out. Oh, please, that numbskull, nut-eating rascal, has asked anyone and everyone to boot me out of this forest. The tailed rat stole my line, too. The forest is a treasure chest of nourishment. The squirrel so blatantly called it food without any sophistication. I came up with that line. Me. That's right, I heard the whole thing. You know I may wake that squirrel. Next page. Next page. Alright, there we go. During the night, but that's on purpose because he does the same thing to me during the day when I'm asleep. I can't help that I am nocturnal. What does he expect me to do? I am certainly not moving. The owl began to pause for a moment and then cut off Grizzly as soon as he could. But I suppose that is not why you are here, is it? You're not here to shake me out of this tree, are you? Grizzly replied, no, I'm not here to kick you out. I'm here because I seek... You what? You seek knowledge? Ha ha ha. Doesn't everybody. You think I knew everything? I am merely just an owl. Owl said, laughing boisterously. Grizzly was getting angry and was losing his temper. Grizzly's voice got deeper and angrier. I needed your advice because I was told you were wise and you could teach me how to find food before the winter. Find food for the winter? Owl had broken out laughing again. Once he got his breath, he spoke. Have you listened to anything I just said about how plentiful the forest is of food? You not hear when I said I am not wise? Because I most certainly am not. I think everyone in this forest is stupid. The owl continued to laugh. Hee 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 haw. At this point, Grizzly was fed up and he was furious how rude the owl was, and he could not stand his incessant laughter. Grizzly then let out a ferocious roar, although it didn't seem to scare the owl in the slightest. Okay, great Grizzly Bear, that vicious roar of yours has no effect of intimidation on me. As you can see, I'm up here in a tree and you're all the way down there on the ground, the owl said so proudly. Look around you, Grizzly. Do you see the birds rattled that frightened? On your friend Squirrel shivering at your superiority? The owl paused to see Grizzly's reaction. Oh, don't look so puzzled. You are the most fearsome creature of the forest. Do you realize what this means? I don't think I do, Grizzly replied, still confused. You oblivious creature. That means you are the ruler of this forest. If you acted like a real bear, maybe you wouldn't be starving, said Owl. He pretended to lighten up. Poor grizzly bear. Hey, do you see that mouse over there? That was going to be mine. Take it. It's all yours. You're all so hungry. I understand if you would treat yourself. Oh, I don't eat mice, Mr. Owl. That's what Grizzly called him, because he didn't deserve the title of wise. Hee-hee-hee-haw, Mr. Owl, you say? So the owl had taught Bear a lesson. He swooped down from the tree and grabbed a mouse with his claws that Grizzly hesitated to eat. Next page. You see, Grizz, if you don't take the opportunity, it's every animal for himself, and if you don't find food soon, you'll end up just like this mouse, except you don't have a predator. If you want help, seek out the fox. He may be sly, but he knows his place in the forest, unlike you. He wouldn't dare take you on because you are a bear and your family has always had dominance over these forests, ever since the wolf pack had left. Although, seeing you so helpless, I could add that he would help you. I suppose this is the last time I will see you, because you are ink so helpless. Have a nice winter, Grizzly Bear. Owl was angry and flew away, leaving Bear to think. Even though Owl was so aggressive in his speech, and it was not the help Bear expected, maybe the Owl was right. Maybe Grizzly was the greatest animal in the forest. After all, Squirrel was afraid of him, and even Rabbit at times. The truth is, Grizzly didn't want any more help from someone else. He couldn't bring himself to ask for help from Fox, because everyone else seemed to fail him. Except for maybe Rabbit. Grizzly was hurt by what Owl had said about him. Observation had made the restless bear extremely vicious and rageful. It then occurred to Grizzly what he was going to do next. In the middle of the night, Grizzly charged to the rabbit's hole, who had just gotten back to Grizzly waiting for him with an intimidating growl where Rabbit could see Grizzly's large teeth. Grizz, what's going on? It's awful light. What are you doing here? Said Rabbit. No, where have you been? Grizz growled. Rabbit hesitated. I was talking to Squirrel. You haven't been yourself lately, and we're worried about you, Grizz. I'm fine. I'm just really hungry. Really hungry. And I was hoping that you could help me. I don't know who else to go to. Everyone else had been able to help me but you. Grizzly, everyone else hasn't been able to help me except you, Grizzly said with mixed emotions. Grizz, I'm really sorry, but no one can help you out. But I can't give you more food. Don't have enough to spare you yet again, said Rabbit, feeling bad for Grizzly. Grizzly seemed to understand, but then he noticed that Rabbit was hiding something behind his back. What are you hiding, Rabbit? Oh, these are some berries I found. You go, you're hiding them from me. You're hiding them from me, Rabbit. You are my best friend, and you used to understand that I need help getting food. Now you're keeping it to yourself, you greedy and selfish rodent. Give them to me, Rabbit. I need it more than you, he screamed at Rabbit. Grizzly Bear, I can't do that. I'm sorry. They both paused for a few moments, and Grizzly became extremely offended. He was drooling with gigantically sharp teeth and growled like no other growl before. He charged at Rabbit as rapidly as he could. Rabbit was frightened, although he was much faster than Grizz was. They ran circles around the forest and looped back to Rabbit's abode where Rabbit went to hide. But as Rabbit tried to creep down in his hole, Grizzly grabbed him by his neck, roaring at it. Next page. What's that for? Wait, what's that for? Mm-hmm. Rabbit. All the berries had been lost by now, but something caught Grizzly's eyes in Rabbit's hole. He dropped Rabbit back on the ground and dug up Rabbit's hole to where Grizzly had found more berries. Now that Grizzly had found Rabbit's food, Rabbit could barely move. Start here. He was shaking in his fear. Wait a minute. What does it mean, start here? Was I supposed to start there when I was reading this damn book? God damn it. I don't know what that means. Oh, God. These persons have clearly not been reading up on their propane manuals. Anyways, he was shaking in fear of what Grizzly would do to him next. Grizzly picked up all the berries and said quietly to Rabbit, "Where did you get all of these?" They repeated with a roar. I said, "Where did you get all of these?" "I found them by the river. Please just don't take them. It's all I have left. I've given you everything else." But Grizzly did not care. At this point, he couldn't believe how selfish Rabbit was acting. He wanted to punish Rabbit for being such a terrible friend who had gobbled up all of the berries toward Rabbit's home. Leaving Rabbit hopeless in tears, he trotted in the deep snow towards the river. However, he needed to pay a visit to Squirrel first. "Oh, hey, Grizzly, you're awful early. Wasn't you here? I just want to thank you for getting the owl out of the tree. You must have really scared him." "I know, I sure was." "Here you go, I promise." Squirrel handed Grizzly a handful of his plentiful variety. A handful for Squirrel, that is. Grizzly had lost all of his patience for his friends. Both Squirrel and Rabbit gave him little offerings, as if it was enough for a grizzly bear, while they hoarded the rest of them for themselves. Grizzly felt like it was no one understood him, and he was already infuriated with fighting for Rabbit. He could no longer trust anyone now. That Rabbit and Squirrel talked behind his back. He let out yet another violent roar. He'd been practicing them more recently, and clenched up Squirrel's tree to steal all of his stored nuts. Wolfing down every almond, acorn, and peanut Squirrel had gathered, Grizzly headed straight for the river where the berries were. At this point, Grizzly had lost all of his senses. He could barely feel the snow fall on his warm brown coat that was covered in white. When Grizzly arrived at the bushes by the river, his mind became filled with even more rage for all the berries that were gone. Thinking the single one was there, he looked further down the stream to see the fox was finishing up the last bush of berries. Grizzly charged at the fox with all of his strength. The fox slid out of the way, making way for Grizzly to fall straight on his face in the snow. "Well, well, if it isn't the great Grizzly Bear. I was told you'd be looking for me. I just didn't think this is how we would meet," said the sly fox. "I wasn't looking for you. I was looking for food, and you stole all of it, you scavenger fox," Grizzly said. "Hey, don't be mad. I can help you find food. You just got to come down there, big guy." "Really? You do that for me?" "No one's been able to help me so far," Grizzly said desperately. "Certainly. I always respected your parents, so it would be an honor. So what do you say? Can I teach you how to hunt?" The fox said mischievously. Grizzly assumed that the fox was trying to trick him, but indeed he was not. It was just his personality that seemed untrustworthy. Fox had shown Grizzly Bear how to hunt well. They went out. Next page. Day after day, finding birds, eggs, moss, and much larger animals such as deer. Plenty of plants were found. There were many fruits and vegetables, even carrots. Grizzly thought of Rabbit when he saw the carrots, but it was too late for Rabbit. He had his chance. They had also found fish and other aquatic life that Grizzly did not know the name of. At some point, Fox departed with Grizzly and stopped hunting. He hoped Grizzly would stop hunting, however. Grizzly was still unsatisfied. After the Fox's departure, Grizzly hunted even more creatures, and ate even more plants than Fox had shown Grizzly. Weeks of hunting, non-stop, Grizzly was finally full as the season bottom had come to an end. It was nighttime when Grizzly had peacefully walked to his den and satisfied hunger and fell asleep for a long, long nap. Grizzly woke up in early springtime. He could feel the sun beating down through his cave. Grizzly was feeling much better, and he was extremely excited. Anyway, every springtime is when Honey was around, although he was nervous in how he was supposed to secure the delicious honey without being strong or stung, or the same thing, I guess, technically. When Grizzly stepped out, it was warm and it was sunny, although something was not right. The forest was still. Not one sound to be heard from any animal. The birds weren't chirping and the frogs weren't ribbiting. This began to worry Grizzly as there were no animals in sight. His immediate thought was, I have to see Rabbit. So Grizzly sprinted to Rabbit's home, wanting to apologize for his ferocious behavior in their fight before his hibernation. But Rabbit was not home. Now Grizzly knew Rabbit had often gone to Squirrel's place to talk with him, but Squirrel nor Rabbit were there. He went to the owl's tree and hoped to at least find him. At last, Owl was there, and it was the only familiar face in the forest. Owl seemed to be displeased, and in a solemn manner. Owl Bear exclaimed, Where is everybody? What happened while I was sleeping? The owl squinted his eyes with dry tears and replied grudgingly, Grizzly, I don't know how to tell you this. I wanted to push you to be a greater you, not rely on the other creatures of pride for you, but I suppose I pushed you too far. What do you mean by that? I'm serious, Grizzly said, choking up. When he went hunting with Fox, he was supposed to stop once he staked away. I told you, Grizzly, no creature can interfere with you, and you have proven that. You see, my rudeness was to make you realize this very fact, but I'm afraid too much of it went to your head. You've eaten every meal of every animal in this forest. There's nothing left here but leaves, trees, and shrubs. You destroy this forest through your own cloud judgment and irrational thinking. Every animal suffered of starvation this winter except you. The bear that diminished the forest of its nutrients and nourishment and then went into slumber for months. Only very few of us survived, and most of the survivors are migrating, following the birds to find another forest. So I am off today with the rest of the flock. Don't try to follow us, Grizzly. You are not welcome with us. But truly, you've earned your stay here, in this now desolate forest. You're the place all yourself now. I hope you find yourself happy now, Grizzly Bear. And the owl flew off in hopes to find the food with the others. The tragedy. Next page. Grizzly cried and cried, going back to Rabbit's place, hoping that this was all a dream. He looked more closely and Rabbit told, this time noticing a still silhouette in the deep dark hole. Grizzly then moved out of the sun that he was blocking. There he saw it. Rabbit, lying there dead. Grizzly gasped and backed away, running to Squirrel's tree. He saw a squirrel lying stiff as a whale, his fox, and many of the other animals of the forest. Grizzly was sobbing and cried out, This can't be happening. How did I let this happen? This thought repeated in his head, on and on until he woke up. Grizzly was back in his cold and damp cave. And this time, no sun was shining through. It was a season that Grizzly had never seen before, the beginning of it, in the fall, and when he got up occasionally during hibernation. But this would be his shortest hibernation yet, because he would not let himself sleep after what he had done. Experiencing a sense of deja vu. Have you been in this place before? Faster than nothing. Grizzly lunged towards Rabbit's place to see if his nightmare was real. Rabbit was alive, but frankly, he was not happy to see Grizzly in the circumstance that happened a month earlier. He would not speak to Grizzly, and he would not even look at him. Grizzly walked through the rest of the forest in deep shame of himself, to hear only the chant against him from all the animals. Go away, Grizzly, they shouted. No one wants you here. You ate all of my food. Are you going to eat me too, said Squirrel. You've doomed us all, Grizzly, said Fox. Hearing all these words drove the guilty Grizzly Bear back to his cave. He cried for hours in his abode, realizing that his nightmare he had had tonight was soon becoming true. Suddenly he heard an intriguing sound. He waited outside to the buzzing of work of a honeybee. The bee struggled to suck out any nectar from the wilting flowers nearby to make honey for his hive. After a while, the bee finally succeeded. At that moment, it finally dawned on Grizzly of what he was to do. Ooh. Grizzly ran for miles, finally exiting the forest after hours of running. It was night time, and he had only rested for a few minutes. Grizzly continued his journey and went through a passage of plain fields of grass and very few trees. He then caught an eye to a steep hill ahead. He thought if he had a vantage point, he could see if there was another forest as great as his own home was. As Grizzly climbed to the very pinnacle of the forest, he saw an even greater forest from his view. Afar, it looked to be not just 3 times the size, but maybe even 5 times the size of his own. The forest was filled with vibrant fruits, lush green plants that filled his humble forest. The grass was lined with golden grains, like the color of honey. The forest was thick with tall trees and full of hundreds of creatures. Many colorful birds had chirped, and the frogs were many colors too. Unlike Grizzly's forest, Grizzly saw every animal in the forest, and new animals he had never seen before. One was like a giant lizard that had a large mouth and lurked in pound waiting for its meal. Grizzly had thought that was what an alligator was from his old saying with the rabbit. Although Grizzly was enthralled to explore his potentially new home, he wanted to go back and tell everyone, but he had a feeling that no one would believe him, and many would be unable to travel as far under the circumstances of doing so. So Grizzly had explained to all the animals of the new forest about his mistake his forest was dying and desperately needed food. They understood and let him take as much as he needed because in this forest it almost seemed as if the resources of food were so abundant that they had an unlimited surplus. So Grizzly, memorizing his backpack to the forest, brought back as much food as he could carry in his paws. He made it back to drop off his food by the river where every animal drank water from, went right back to the new forest. He made many trips back and forth to each forest, bringing back everything he learned that the creatures eat. Vegetables, grains, nuts. Next page. Fish, worms, seeds, berries, and even cabbage and carrots. At some point, the birds of the grizzly's forest caught on and began to help the bear in his many relay trips. After several times of the birds' help, the birds of the new forest brought food back to the other forest, following Grizzly to his home. For many hours, each tribe's bird assisted Grizzly, but they soon gave up. Even after his many trips, Grizzly knew that there still wasn't enough for everyone to make it to the new forest. So Grizzly went back for 2 weeks, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, bringing back food for his friends who hated him. Although that was not the case, every animal really did appreciate Grizzly's efforts, for he did save the forest. Yet still not everyone survived. The survivors, satisfied in hunger, comfortably followed a weary Grizzly in the warm springtime to their new home. Grizzly could barely breathe or walk, but he kept leading the caravan of followers to the new forest. Rabbit caught up to Grizzly, hopping so happily, and Grizzly took the opportunity to tell Rabbit what he wanted for the whole winter. "I'm so sorry, Rabbit. I treated you so wrongly. I called you selfish when I was the one who was. I stole everything from you, and from everyone, for myself so I could feed my hunger. I'm sorry we got into a fight. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. Look at what you are doing now, Grizzly. You saved our forest. Maybe not the place we live, but the animals we live with. And we are forever in your gratitude, even though what you did in the autumn before your slumber nearly brought our forest to an end. But hey, anyway, I brought you some carrots and cabbage." Grizzly the bear and Rabbit both chuckled as they lead the pack together to the new forest. When they arrived at the new forest, everyone was ecstatic. Some made new friends. Fox made friends with other foxes, and Squirrel made friends with other squirrels. Others themselves at home immediately. But Rabbit stood by Grizzly the whole time, like a good friend that he'd always been to Grizzly. Rabbit had noticed that Grizzly had spotted something, and his eyes stayed straight on it. It was a beehive. "Look, Grizz, there's a beehive. You know what that means? Honey," Rabbit said to him. "Why aren't you trying to get some, Grizz? We haven't had honey in a year." Bear watched the bees buzz around so joyfully and diligently to provide need for its hive. "No, Rabbit, I'm not going to take the honey. I'm going to leave it as a reminder." "A reminder of what?" Rabbit said very confusingly. "Of hope," Bear said so proudly. Grizzly Bear had saved his forest dwellers. He was still haunted by his rageful hunting. And for each animal that now had suffered or perished in his path, well, this tore at Grizzly's heart. Something else did as well. He could not quite place it, but it was yet something didn't feel right about the whole situation. It felt as if none of it had happened, but everything felt so real. Even his nightmare, thinking of all these thoughts, Grizzly Bear gazed at the owl that had just arrived. They all perched on a tree, looking from far away before his entry into the forest and spoke. Next page. So, as you can see, this is the true outcome of Bear's story, indeed. I do not overestimate or underestimate Grizzly, but Grizzly changed from being so helpless to selfish to selfless. And that concludes that Grizzly is truly the leader of this forest, said the narrator. The owl had taken off to not abide with his newfound friends of the old, rather new forest, to provide wisdom for other forests. The end in Fancy's writing.